Good evening, very warm welcome to the West Yorkshire Football Show and our usual Monday night roundup of all the weekend's goings on across our region. Delighted to say I'm joined by Lewis Sale and by Gareth Walker. How are we, gents? Are we well?
Good, mate. Thank you. How are you?
Mate, yourself?
Yes, very well. A little bit more relieved now that Lincoln are currently 1-0 up after taking the mick out of Downsy all weekend about Huddersfield going out of the FA Cup in the first round on Friday night. We'll talk a little bit more about the FA Cup a little bit later on. Lewis, though, for yourself, a good weekend?
Yeah, actually skipped football this weekend, which is very bizarre of me to do this on a Monday night roundtable. But yeah, I've actually not seen any football this weekend. It was a bit of family time, which was bizarre. But yeah, all good, mate. Thank you.
Gaz, I mean, obviously we'll touch on the game itself in a little bit more detail later, but Bradford avoiding an upset and through. Good weekend.
Yeah, that was the main thing. I think, like you said, similar to you, really. Like, you can't take the mickey out of Downsy if you're going to lose yourself the next day. So, yeah, I went over to Bradford on Saturday and we did all right, to be fair. We got a job done. That was the main thing.
I love it how we got not even 2 minutes into the show and we've already mentioned Downsy and Huddersfield losing. Brilliant. Well done, boys.
He don't care. He's over in Malaga or wherever he is, isn't he?
Well, but wherever he is, he's in someone in Malaga. He's actually watching because he's already commented. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know what he's saying particularly. I can't read Spanish, but I'm guessing it doesn't say we were terrible at Tamworth and deserve to lose that game. Let's move on and get things started. I'm delighted to say we are joined by a special guest tonight, a Bradford City youth player, a Lincoln City legend. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to go with it early. This is a bit of, this is a genuine pleasure tonight to have Scott Kerr on the show. Thanks for joining, Scott.
No problem, mate. How are we doing? All right?
All good. Obviously, Lincoln in action tonight. Hopefully avoiding a cup upset unlike Huddersfield. I'm going to keep mentioning that, Downsy, if he's watching in Spain.
Keep mentioning it.
How was your weekend? How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not bad, thanks. Yeah, all good. I've just heard Lincoln are winning 1-0, which is nice to hear. Always tricky, the FA Cup weekends, aren't they? Especially with the lower sides, it's always something for them to try and pinch hold of and players to try and look to nick moves into sort of get into league football and stuff. So they're always tricky ties.
Thinking of just the Lincoln years in the FA Cup, actually, I think you would have got through a couple of these sorts of games against lower opposition. Probably in your last year at the club, on the road to the Bolton game in the third round. I think we had Telford and Northwich Victoria.
Yeah, there were a few. I think there were a few tricky ones. I think we was the Northwich one. They put us on. If I can remember rightly, I've got a crap memory, but I think they'd knocked Charlton out in the round previous. So I think ITV threw us on TV to try and.
That was it.
Yeah, we put us on live on ITV. I remember that one. Yeah, we won 3-1 in the end. I think it was.
Lewis, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, before it becomes the Lincolnshire football show, that'd be grand, lads. Yeah. Scotty, good to see you, mate. Long time no see and all that. Yeah, good to see you. Obviously, we'll kick off a little bit of an in-depth chat with yourself tonight, and obviously we'll bring Gaz into it. But first of all, it started at one of our local clubs in the region, Bradford City. Obviously, as a youth academy player, as it probably was then, and working your way up, let's be honest, Scott, you can't take it away. You won Premier League appearance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had good times at Bradford. To be fair, I was at Leeds. I was at Leeds United from like a young boy, 7-year-old or something, up to about 13, and then I got released for being too small. And I think it was like literally I got released on the Wednesday or something, and then I got picked up by Bradford on the Sunday. I got offered a trial. 6-week trial by Steve Smith, unfortunately, who sadly passed away not long ago. It was obviously, quite big at Huddersfield as well. He offered me a 6-week trial, and after week 1, I got offered a contract as a schoolboy, and then we worked our way through to the obviously youth team when I left school, and I think I was the last year of the old school YTS. We were on about this other day because my son's just started an apprenticeship, and he's earning something like 270 quid a week. I think I were on £42.50 a week. And yeah, we were part of the old regime of cleaning boots and doing jobs and stuff like that before it all changed.
So obviously, I didn't know it's that bit at Leeds United. I think you still follow Leeds, am I right?
Yeah, I'm a Leeds fan, yeah. To be fair, I've been to quite a few of the games this year. Try to get down when I can.
Because we had two of our lads actually who can't make it tonight, Leeds fans, so that will be music to their ears as well, mate. But
yeah,
it's obviously, like you say, yourself at City. Just give us a little bit of, just a bit of stories in terms of who you played with, some of the coaches, and how you kind of worked your way up to becoming part of that first team.
So obviously, I come in, and it was Paul Jewell. Paul Jewell was manager, and it was, and like I say, part of the old school regime, really, which was, I've done a few podcasts like this, and I always say it was the best thing that happened for me. Like, it just gives you the grounding and the discipline, and you see it nowadays. A lot of the young lads, they don't have that discipline anymore, and it's because they're not meant to, do them sort of things. Which just, that's where I think like a lot of young lads now, when they leave bigger clubs and that, they fall away so quick because they're not used to the dropping down the leagues and how tough it actually is. So then I just grafted really, and Paul Jewell were a scary character, so it were always, it was one of them. I was training with the first team at 16, but every pass was, if you misplaced a pass, he was on your back, like. So it just made you be a better player. It made you take pride in what you were doing, and like I say, I was thankful for that. And then like I say, my time changed quite a bit because we had some hard-working players and steady players from the year we got promoted with like Millsy and Blakey up front, which were quality as a partnership. Stuart McCall, obviously, players like that. To then getting in the Premier League and playing alongside like Benito Carboni and Stan Collymore and Dan Petrescu, certain characters that you just like, ridiculous. It unfortunately worked against Bradford realistically. All the names they brought in and the money they were spending it was never gonna be sustainable, unfortunately, which caused to the downfall, and the relegation back down the leagues and a massive struggle sort of thing.
Yeah, we're going to ask you about that, Scott. Basically, like what it was like, the shift that it went from signing, like you say, all these hard-working players to then signing these superstars. Did it sort of affect it around the training ground and morale and everything? Because they were coming in on big money, I'm guessing, weren't they?
I think so. Obviously, I was a young lad at the time, so it was hard for us. It was a bit surreal for us as young lads because these players are coming in and it was an hard one because obviously it was under when Paul Jewell left, and there was a bit of a cloud where Paul Jewell went to Sheffield Wednesday. Due to it's not, it's well known fact that like Jeffrey Richmond were probably having a dabble in the team and who were playing and who weren't playing, and I think Paul had basically said, I want full reins of picking the team and stuff, and he wasn't willing to let that go. So, which then unfortunately, I really like Chris Hutchins. To be fair, he was one of the best coaches throughout my career. He got given the manager's job, but ultimately he wasn't probably ready to be a manager. And then especially when you're bringing in your likes of big egos, that are just overpowering attitude. Stan Collymore come in and, he's a bit of he's one of them, just did what he wanted really, and it ultimately brings problems, doesn't it? And as a young coach, just giving a manager's job, your first manager's job, it's a difficult scenario to be in. And that killed me a little bit because I was in the fringes of the first team, and then we played in the Intertoto Cup. I remember playing away at FK Atlantis in Lithuania, and it was all one of them that the shirt's yours and keep doing well and you'll be playing. And then as soon as the season started, it was like, right, all these big players were all playing and picked it, no matter how well you were doing in training. And unfortunately, that's the way it was back then.
Did you take a lot from that then, Scott? Like that experience, playing with those guys, but also the tough time that it was tough. They got relegated that season, didn't we?
Yeah.
And then was that when you moved on to Scarborough?
Yeah, that was when there was obviously that was back end of that year. They obviously got rid of Chris Hutchins and brought in the Scottish guy Jim Jeffries and Billy Brown, his assistant manager. And they come in and they just weren't ready as well. They were ruthless. But they just wanted to bring all the Scottish contingent in. So you see it a lot throughout football, and I've had it first hand throughout my career. You get a lot of these managers that, Warnock's a big one with all these players, and it worked for him. But you get a lot of these managers that try to go to players that they've had at other clubs, but the levels are different. So you're bringing in like, you know, Gary Locke coming from Arts, and he's playing in the Premier League at right back, and he was never a Premier. You know what I mean? He was a nice lad and that great lad and that, but he was never Premier League standard. And you know, we weren't hiding to nothing from then. And then obviously I remember playing in the last game against Coventry.
Yeah.
Coming on a sub against Coventry in the last game before we got relegated. And then, I moved on after in that summer. Maybe, you know, I look back now, obviously I never no regrets in my career, but I moved on to Hull. Hull coming and put a bid in for me, so I went to Hull from Bradford.
Right.
And then that season in the Championship, a lot of the young lads got a chance, I think, because basically the club was in turmoil. So, you know, a couple of lads who I played with all got a chance, which I'd have probably been in front of if I'd have stayed. So a little maybe regret there. It'd been nice, you know, to try and get a good few games under my belt at Bradford. But, you know, it want to be.
Just going to say, Scott, in terms of, albeit sub-appearance, but it's something you can always take to your grave, can't you? You know, you've played in the Premier League. What was it like as a youngster at that time, making a debut in the Premier League? Was that something that you really cherish now?
Yeah, 100%. You know, I got added on. I've added a few years ago on Twitter, and it's going through all Premier League appearance makers, and obviously it popped up, and I'm in it. You know what I mean? So yeah, you can't take that away from you. You know what I mean? Obviously, you'd like to have played more, and you know, with different breaks, and different opportunities. You know, I might have done, but you know, it is what it is. But like I said, there's no one can take that away from you. You know, even though it's only one, it's still, you know, one Premier League games, you know, more than a lot of people can say. So
absolutely more than us. So obviously Hull City afterwards, like you say, for a spell. I mean, obviously a bit at Frickley. So how did that materialise for you at Hull?
Yeah, so I went to Hull. Obviously, I ended up getting a new agent, which was Peter Jackson, ex-Bradford City. Yeah, Peter Jackson was my agent for a bit with a break when he went from Huddersfield. He had a break out of management with Huddersfield. I was actually going out with his niece at the time, so it was like, right, my uncle will be the agent, and then he took me to Hull. And then I had a bad injury. Weirdly, I got a bad injury when I was literally 1 week into pre-season. Obviously, I'd gone there. Brian Little was manager. They'd just come out of administration. So I think we signed 16 players in the off-season. And I got injured in the first week, and it turned out I had a slip disc in my back and never really recovered from it. So I had to end up having an operation. They tried a load of like rehab treatment for maybe 3 months. Didn't work. I was travelling from like Leeds to Hull. And then I ended up going down the operation route. So I had an operation at like 18, 19. I had a partial discectomy. And then, unfortunately, I come back to fitness, and then Brian Little got sacked, and they brought in Jan Molby. So Jan Molby come in, literally.
Wow.
He was unbelievable. Even in training, to be fair, he was an angry man though. He used to train and he used to just kick people like he were like. But you'd never get the ball off him because you couldn't get round him. To be fair, but his feet were like, brilliant. You know what I mean? But then his time didn't last very long. So I was just getting in and around, like getting a chance with him, and he got sacked. And Peter Taylor come in, who obviously went on to, Bradford manager and England manager, and he come in and give it the old spiel of like everyone's going to get a chance, and give everyone 6 weeks. To give a chance at first team, and then day after, 6 lads walked in with bags, all new players, and that was that really. He basically just said that I had a year and a half left on my contract, and he basically said the chairman will look after you, sort of thing, pay my contract up. So he would try to get rid of a few. So I got my agent went in. At this time, I'd left Peter Jackson at this point because nothing really was materialising, and I needed to get out really. So I left. Well, before I left, sorry, I'd been on loan at Frickley because I was travelling in with a guy called Sean Smith, who played at Crewe for a lot of years. He was captain at Crewe Alexandra for years, and his friend was manager at Frickley. That's the only reason why I went there. I went on a month's loan just to get games, and that was a bit of an eye opener. Playing at Frickley, but it was one of them. I just needed to get some games and try and get playing really. And then so then I left Hull and went to Scarborough.
I was going to say, I mean, that's in the space of a season and a bit. You're going from sub-appearance in the Premier League, and with all respect to Frickley, going to Frickley on loan, it's them breaks, and that's just football, unfortunately, and it's sometimes how it works out.
Yeah, it's crazy, but you sometimes need to drop to them levels just to get games. I speak to people nowadays who are chatting about, playing at like Conference North, levels, and you need to be playing games to get in the shop window to get an opportunity back in the league or back in the conference, levels like that. And luckily for me, I signed for Scarborough just till end of the season, just to play games, and then it pretty much went from there. Really, I started playing regular, and then did really well. I sort of killed myself a little bit because Scarborough weren't in a position to offer like long contracts, so they were like offering year contracts to everyone. Because I'd just come back from a bad, serious back injury, I was pushing for a 2-year contract, and they give me it, to be fair, because I'd done so well in the last 10 games. They give me it, and because I was only young still, I think they felt that it'd probably work in their benefit. So I signed a 2-year deal, which killed me a little bit, because then the very next season I was on fire, to be fair. That was the year we played Chelsea in the FA Cup 4th round, and I got man at match live on Sky against Lampard and players like that, Petit. But then clubs were coming in for me, but then Scarborough were like wanting big money then, and it was like the clubs aren't going to pay it. So it was just one of them, if I hadn't have had the back injury, I probably would have took the 1-year deal, but I just got a mortgage and, just things like that, a bit of security really. It probably worked against me in the end, but then, like I say, end of that season come and I had a few clubs interested.
I was just going to... You took the words out of my mouth about the Scarborough. I mean, obviously that is probably a highlight, isn't it, really, in fairness of a career of playing against Chelsea, who, let's be honest, played such a strong team. I remember watching a game myself.
Oh, yeah.
And you winning man of the match. I mean, just describe what it's like to play against them calibre of players, Scott.
Oh, it was unbelievable, because obviously you're watching them on TV, aren't you? And like you just watch them. And then when they come out, they were stood at side of us, and they all just looked about 5 foot taller than us all, and they were just athletes, aren't they? And you're just looking at Lampard and then John. And I remember first minute, I think the ball dropped in midfield, and Lampard hit a screamer from about 35 yards that rattled post, and it was like, oh, what's going on here? And then 5 minutes in, John Terry heads one in, and you're like, oh my God, this is going to be a long day. Like, but we settled into the game, and to be fair, we were really unlucky not to. Yeah. We should have had a penalty in the last minute or so. I think William Gallas handballed it, and the referee shit himself a bit, and he didn't give it. And which I always say, looking back now, probably a bit of a godsend, because we went out on his haunches a little bit. We give everything. We got beat 1-0. I think if we'd have nicked a draw and gone to Stamford Bridge, we could have got an absolute. Do you know what I mean? We could have.
Really?
It could have been one of them results where you think we should have just lost 1-0 back at home. But don't get me wrong, it'd have been nice to sort of play there. But I think it was probably a bit of a blessing that we didn't get the equaliser.
In current times, it's starting to see people saying that they shouldn't have got a replay.
Oh, just going to say it.
Oh, yeah.
You're quite glad you didn't get the replay.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Sorry, Lou.
So then, obviously, after Scarborough, you moved on, didn't you? Afterwards.
I got quite a lot of interest, and the weird thing was I was in the England non-league team, the England C team, and I was captain of the England C team, and the manager there was Paul Fairclough, who was manager of Barnet.
Yeah, I think he's still doing it, possibly.
I think he might be, and he was great, but he was trying he was literally my biggest fan, and he was on the phone every time. Like they actually put an offer in. I think they put a 50 grand offer into Scarborough at back end of the season, because they were top of the conference just before I left Scarborough. And my agent was like, why are you putting an offer in? Like, he's a free agent in the summer. You're going to go up. You don't really need him this year. Like, we'll talk in the summer. And then I was under 24, so I was on a Bosman. I couldn't go for free. So, but then Scarborough, the way the club was run, unfortunately, and this leads to the downfall of Scarborough, they were run by, like, they had one secretary guy that were running everything, and he were a bit clueless. And they didn't offer me a contract in writing by the first week in May, so I automatically become a free agent. I then signed for Lincoln as a free, and they knew they didn't have to pay any money. But then Scarborough stopped paying my wages for the last. So they actually got a transfer embargo put on them, and they actually hammered me in the press, saying that I'd basically left, and it's cost them a load of money, and they had to rescind all that, because basically it was their mistake. It was an internal error that they didn't follow the rules, so it cost them probably between 50 and 100k, which it would have been a massive help for Scarborough.
Yeah.
So I got a lot of stick off the back of that. I always remember going back to Scarborough for a night out once to watch Leeds Carlisle in the playoffs. I'd just been to York races, and a little 12-year-old kid were like, "You're Scott Kerr. You're not welcome here anymore." Little kid were like that. Give me some shit in Scarborough. I was like, oh, fucking hell. But yeah. So they had to come out and apologise. Then they had a transfer embargo put on them because they refused to pay me wages until they paid up my wages. Then it got a bit messy, really.
How long after that did Scarborough kind of really suffer and
pretty
go into the wall?
Yeah, pretty much straight away. They had the next season in the conference. Nick Henry and Neil Redfern were there, and then it pretty much just went from that. Because obviously during the Scarborough run, they earned a lot of money. You know, we had some good ties. Like the replay before Chelsea, we played Southend at home, which the McCain Stadium were full to the brim.
Mhm.
You know, they reckon they earned about £1 million in that run, and then the chairman just disappeared. So I don't. You know, it's where did it all go? Do you know what I mean? Stuff like that. And then they went pretty much to obviously it's good to see them, you know, creeping back up, and they had a good FA Cup run, only just got beat by Burton at the weekend.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's sad to see obviously the club go where they did, but unfortunately when clubs are run wrongly, it's inevitable, really.
And what league were Lincoln in when you went there, Scott?
So League Two, Keith Alexander was the manager at the time. He, like I said, I'd spoke to Grimsby because Russell Slade was manager at Grimsby and he was my manager at Scarborough. So he was begging me to go there, but it was like begging me to go there, but then basically saying they had no money and try to keep me on peanuts, basically. And it was like, I can't afford to come for that sort of thing. And then Lincoln just seemed the right fit. I met Keith Alexander. He was, a great guy. And yeah, went there, and the rest was history. I spent 6 years at Lincoln. 250 games. Went through multiple managers, multiple players. I was always one of the last standing, really. And I always thought I'd probably stay at Lincoln for the rest of my career. Potentially, maybe go on to get a testimonial, and then Chris Sutton come in and tried to freshen things up a bit. Dropped me, and then I worked my way back into the team under Chris, and he rung me at Christmas and offered me a new 2-year deal and stuff, and got on really well with him. And then it was only when Steve Toulson come in that was pretty much the nail in the coffin ultimately. I think when I left, and it was on deadline day, we were actually supposed to be playing Lincoln Bradford. It was going to be, I think, my 250th league game for Lincoln or something. And on the Monday we were doing shape, preparing for the game. On Tuesday I was starting, and then I got a phone call saying York were interested, and Tilson had basically said to me there wouldn't be a long-term contract for me at the end of the season. So I was in a bit of a, what do I do here? And I just made it were about 10 o'clock at night. I were at home, and I just went, you know what? I'm going. So I went across to York and had a medical at like 10 o'clock at night, and then played for York on the Tuesday against AFC Wimbledon, and we beat them 4-1. It was a really good game, and that was that. And I think that's the season Lincoln went down. Then I think I think when I left we were about 10th in the league, maybe not far off playoffs. And if I remember right, they maybe picked up about 6 points out of a possible 46 or something, and got beat on the last day of the season by Aldershot and got relegated.
Well, in the last 11 games of the season without picking up a single win. And if they won one game, they just stayed up. But
one game, that's all they needed. Yeah, one game to win, and they literally lost. Yeah, I think they drew away at Crewe and lost the rest of the other 10.
I mean, looking back at, as you say, Lincoln, the fact that you played under 5 separate managers, obviously Keith Alexander. I mean, a childhood hero, like in the dugout for me. What was he like as a person and a character?
Yeah, he was one of the best managers. He was not the most tactically brilliant. He was one of the old school man managers that we don't have anymore. He'd protect his players with all his heart. Just before I got there, obviously, as you'll be aware, Chris, the players were playing for players weren't getting paid, and they still got in the playoffs, and that was down to Keith Alexander. Simple as that. I did a bit of a Legends night at Lincoln a couple of months back, and it was great. And there was Simon Yeo there and a few others, and everyone can only speak highly of Keith. He was just amazing man, and he just looked after his players, and I think that's why he got his just rewards. Nowadays there's too many coaches out there that are all bothered probably about their own careers rather than their actual players. And I think the more Keiths that'd be about, still the better for the game.
Yeah, obviously, like as you say, like players would just run through brick walls for him. And as you say, when being paid, absolutely bugger all, really, in the grand scheme of things.
But do you know what Keith did? The first thing Keith did was, as soon as the club because when I signed, the club had just been stabilised and they had a bit of money. But the first thing Keith did was go to Paul Morgan, Alan Marriott, Butcher, all these core players, and offer them all 3-year contracts on good money. And and that's what it should be like. Players that had played for nothing for him, he didn't look to go and buy players. He wanted to look after them before then going out, and that's what it should be about. Where unfortunately it isn't anymore.
And his kind of his scouting network that he had, like the fact that he picked up obviously Simon Yeo, who was part-time postman and former soldier, and playing for Hyde at the time. There was a few that he picked up. That's Kevin Samwith came from lower down, and he had the eye for picking up players.
Yeah, I think, and do you know what? I think his assistant manager Gary Simpson was a big thing. Like when I first went there, me and Simo maybe had different. We didn't really see eye to eye at the start, but he was a weird character. But he was a good. He was the one who was out scouting, I think, the lower leagues and looking for players, and because he was the one who initially who phoned me, and then obviously I went and met Keith and stuff. So I think they had a good, like I say, good hard-working, relationship between them, and like you say, picking up players from non-league and getting a lot out of them.
Obviously, the end of that season. Speaking of Russell Slade and his Grimsby side, as you mentioned a moment or two, ended in playoff defeat, solid 2.
Yeah,
the arch rivals Grimsby.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Because I think in that season we'd battered them as well 5-0 I think it was 5-0. That might be the season after. I'm not sure, but yeah, it turned into that a bit of a torturous one, that losing to them in the semis. I think that was the one where Curtis Woodhouse was at Grimsby. I had a bit of beef with Curtis Woodhouse in midfield. We had a bit of
That's risky because he had a boxing career.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He went on there not long after he retired and become a British champion boxer, didn't he? So, yeah, it's a good job. Like I say, I've been offered it at car park a few times after games and that, but thankfully not by Curtis Woodhouse.
Obviously, after Keith left, it was kind of a season with just over a season with John Schofield and John Dean. How did they kind of play things out compared to Keith before?
Yeah, well, that was a weird one as well, because obviously John Schofield has been an ex-Lincoln legend, and he's been in the coaching system, and then he took over, and then John Dean come in, but it was such a weird one because they didn't actually know each other, so it was the club that brought John Dean in to like head of management or whatever.
Head of recruitment or
head of recruitment, head of something.
Like an early director of football, I guess.
It was a weird. Yeah, it was before. Yeah, all that really everyone knew it was always like a manager and a coach. But yeah, that was a weird one because they didn't actually get on, and it was like you'd have. When you see these under 10 games now, and you've got two coaches shouting different things. It was like that, but as adults, I remember we went to France on a pre-season tour, and it was like we were playing a third division French team who were like Paris Saint-Germain. They were popping us all over, and John Dean was in the stand at one side, and Scoey was on the bench on the dugout. And I remember going the ball went out on the near Scoey, and Scoey was like, "Oh, get your wingers in and tighten up because we're getting run all over." And then the ball went out on the left side, and John Deere went, "Get your wingers wider." So it was like, for fuck's sake. Do you know what I mean? So it was a real weird situation. And then they'd do maybe 2 days coach. So you train on a Monday, and Scoey would take a session, and then Tuesdays John Dean would take a session. So it was, and obviously John Dean had managed at Norwich or he'd been involved in higher up the pyramid.
Yeah,
so
he came in from Villa, I think, didn't
Villa,
he?
yeah, Villa, that was it. Yeah, Villa, and he'd had a good career. So you tended to listen a bit, but yeah, it was just conflicting. They weren't on the same page really, but obviously we was flying as well. That was I think there was a season where we only had about 13 players. I think we had Stallard and Forrester up front.
Oh, that's scary.
Yeah,
that was both.
Oh, it was brilliant. Yeah, and then we had obviously myself. I think was Freck still there. Freck was there. Yeah, brought Freck in, and we had a team that was just playing. I think for the first 10 games we were top of the league or something, and then we fell away at the end of the season. We just run out of steam really, and we ended up going from top 3, dropped into the playoffs. Then I think that was the season we got beat by Bristol Rovers.
It was
in the playoffs. We got pumped. To be fair, yeah, that was another tough one to swallow. And I think that one, not long after Peter Jackson come in then, because that was the next story. I obviously sacked off Peter Jackson as my agent because we'd had a falling out, and then next minute he gets the Lincoln job, and I'm like,
I was about to say, how did this pan out then? Because
well, to be fair to Peter, he come in and he's one of them. He don't really hold any grudges, and he come in and he was just like straight away. He was just like, obviously I was captain at the time, so he was like, right, hatchet buried really. We need to get results, and I helped him with about players and stuff like that. And that was, it was great. And it was great playing under Peter, because he's another one of the old school managers. Wasn't great. He used to get other coaches to do his badges for him. Like, he had to do a refresher on his UEFA B badge. He used to send Paul Musselwhite to do it. He'd be like, "Oh, do that badges from here." But he'd stand on the sideline, and he'd be another one of them that, if you were taking, if the training was sloppy, you'd be running around the pitch. It were more, man management. He'd get things out of players, and if you asked for a day off for certain things, he'd always want a nice bottle of wine. And I always remember, I think Linnell John Lewis brought him a bottle of my Blossom Mill in, and he just fucking smashed it on the floor. I think it was like Blossom Mill. But he was another one of them. Unfortunately, he got throat cancer and went through a difficult period. It was a real sad time, to be fair. And then like I said, things turned a little bit the season after, and he was another one obviously to fall by the wayside.
I mean, I need to ask you more about life under Jacko at Lincoln, because obviously, given everything that he went through, with his own health, and obviously, if Iheanaora took charge whilst he was recovering, but that squad, I always remember from looking as a fan, there was the whole Jacko's magnificent seven of signings coming in with likes of Stefan Oakes, Janos Kovacs would have been one of them. And then I need to ask you as well, of course, about a certain Romanian one, Adrian Petulia. Look, is it true that, because the folklore story is that he got a trial with the club by running around the training ground with his girlfriend naked on his back?
That's true. Yeah,
is that the actual story?
That's true. Yeah, he was up on the training ground, and he was like running with his missus on his back, and but that was where Jacko. Then he asked Jacko for a trial, and it was like that's where Jacko's like, yeah, come for a trial. And to be fair, he wasn't a bad player in the end. He was
double figures, I think. That
season. He did well, and he scored some good goals. He scored some important goals. He was a nice lad as well, to be fair. And I suppose he had some balls running, just rocking up to a training pitch with the missus. And got a trial, and the rest were history. Yeah, fair play to the lad.
That squad under Jacko, one that you kind of look back on and think it probably should have done better than it did in the end for Lincoln.
Yeah, I think so. You look at it at the time, and obviously I had myself and Frecklinton and Stefan Oakes playing in field. Like Stefan Oakes was a good player. Maybe he didn't have the legs to get around, but his left foot was, phenomenal. Absolute unbelievable quality. We should have done. You look at it, and we had like Danny and Gesson, players like that come in who went on to play champions. A lot of championship games between them. He was a cracking player. It's just sometimes how it is, isn't it? Small moments in certain certain areas, and we probably underachieved.
Would I be right in thinking as well that there would have been a very young Sam Clucas around at that time, or would that have been just after Jacko, maybe? Because he's one of those players I always look at.
Yeah, well, he went on to. That was a weird one with Sam, because Sam come when Jacko was there, and he come from a college team. I think he'd been at college or something, and then he got involved, and I think he gave him a contract, but he was always playing like reserves and stuff like that. And then they let him go, and he obviously they would let him go next. He
had.
Well, what a career, yeah. But I don't think anyone could have seen that coming. That's prime what I was saying to Lewis at start. It's like, it's them opportunities. He dropped out of football, went to Hereford, found a little comfort zone there, played games, and before you know it, he nicked a move to a championship club, and then he were Hull City, Stoke City, captain of Stoke. I don't know how many games he played at a really, really good level. You would never have envisaged that, but fair play to him.
And then from Jacko, of course, experienced as he was both as a player and as a manager, to somebody that didn't have the experience in the dugout before for Lincoln, and hasn't since, in Chris Sutton. I mean, look, again, he famously beat off, I think, 70-odd applicants, and we appointed, obviously, one-time England player Chris Sutton.
Yeah, I think
that?
There was a lot of rumours around that one, to be fair. There was also rumours that he'd paid, which, like you just said, there's 70 applicants. There was rumours that he'd put 250 grand into the club, but whether that was ever confirmed or not, I don't know. But he obviously got the job out of a lot of applicants, and it was I think his process would have been probably come in, do well at Lincoln, and potentially fall on either a Norwich job or Celtic job. On his next job. I think that's why he's probably not, maybe managed since, to be honest. And he was another one though. He just come in and he was ruthless, but he was also didn't really know the level. So he used to join in training and stuff like that, and he used to just moan at everyone because they want Premier League standard players, but we're playing in League Two. Do you know what I mean? It's like he used to just moan as if like you should be doing this, you should be doing that, as if he couldn't let the Premier League like standard go. You know, you're managing in League Two, and it's different, unfortunately. But then he brought in Ian Pearce, who was his assistant, and he was brilliant. To be fair, obviously ended up playing some games. To be fair, he was brilliant. It was like good cop, bad cop. To be fair, Pearce, he was like funny, good to be around the lads. Sutton was just bone dry, as you can see on his commentary. He's just dry, and he's just dry and thingy. But I ended up getting on well with him. He sent me with the reserves straight away because he was good friends with Martin O'Neill. We used to play reserve games against Aston Villa every Monday morning. And because he dropped me, but it wasn't all that bad because you go to Aston Villa and you're playing on these unbelievable training pitches against decent players like Rio Coker, the kid who's at Chef Wednesday, Barry Bannon. He was playing in the game, Stuart Downing, and I just did what I did. Ultimately, I just went knuckle down, bossed the games, and then like all he ever did with them praise me, saying, "Oh, you young lad, you need to look at Scott Kerr, blah blah blah." He's been, and I were out of the team for 6 games. And then he put me back in, and then the rest was history. Like I say, I played every game under him. He rung me at Christmas, thanked me for all like my hard work and not giving in, and offered me a new 2-year deal. And then I think he's got a book out, and I think he says something in the book. Says something nice about him. If it weren't for me, we wouldn't have stayed up that year.
Nice.
So fair play. Swings and roundabouts.
Yeah.
Again, it was somebody who was using his contacts as well. Because again, I remember like Eric
very
Lehigh, Chris Hurd in particular.
Chris Hurd.
He was a cracking little player. And then there was a couple at Fulham as well. Yes.
Yeah, we had Baker. We had Baker who went on to have a good career centre half. Then we got David Sommer from Leeds, who was a cracking player.
He was a player in, wasn't he?
Oh my God.
He's good. I think even now, like all these years later, he's still revered by Lincoln fans as
he's unbelievable.
Probably like the best loanee, one of the best loanees we've ever had.
Yeah, I still speak to him a little bit. He's got him on social media. He's obviously coaching in America now, and he's back home in America. And he was from South Africa, wasn't he? But he's a good lad, really nice kid. We used to travel in together, got to know him really well. And then obviously after that spell at Lincoln, he went and started the season at Leeds, and he was banging goals in the Championship. And unfortunately for him, he tore his knee ligaments, which was pretty much the end for him. I think it killed his career.
Yeah.
Because he could have gone on to be an absolute, cracking player.
He could finish.
Oh yeah, he could hit a ball. Yeah, when he hit it, he stayed it like.
and then finally, as you touched on earlier, after Chris Sutton came Steve Toulson, and let's be fair, Lincoln fans don't look back too fondly at the Steve Toulson period, understandably so. He seemed at the time when he came in, to his credit, obviously he worked wonders at Southend to take him from League Two to the Championship. What do you know, kind of what the feeling was from yourself as captain at the time, and the squad, of the fact that actually we've gone from Chris Sutton, who was in his first role, to somebody that had at the time been there and done it.
I think the problem that killed Steve Toulson, he had an arrogance about him. Like,
and he didn't have Freddie Eastwood.
Yeah, well, yeah, he was arrogant, and he didn't. We spoke about Chris Sutton like dropping me and trying to make a statement, but Chris Sutton then, would, if he made a mistake, he'd own it and change things. And whereas Steve Toulson just come in with in his head, it was like he wanted to bring his own players in, and that was that. He was going to try and bring and because he was from down south, Cockney, he were bringing all these Cockneys up, which you lost that. You started to lose that team ethics, that good group of players. Players were all just, different groups were forming, cliques within the group. And then it was he tried to drop me so many times. And I just my performances were just keeping me in the team. Week in, week out, you could see he didn't want to play me. But I'd just get man of the match, and then he'd be like, you could see it through the week. He was trying to push me out. And then I'd just play on the Saturday and I'd get man of the match again. And that's why it's got to the point where I was like, he basically said at the end of the season, even if I got man of the match every game of the season, he wasn't going to offer me a contract. So that's why, like I said, I was in the team against Bradford, but I got the opportunity to go to York, and it was closer to home, and there was just, I hummed hard for ages about it. And then, like I say, about 10 o'clock at night, I drove across the A64 to York and just took a medical. And to be fair, I had a couple of great years at York.
final thing on Lincoln before I let Lewis continue. Kind of what would be 2 or 3 kind of highlights really from your time at Lincoln? I'd say 249 games, I think it is for the club over the years. And obviously there was playoff defeats in that, but what would be your highlights really, or the magic moments for Lincoln?
I think playing for Keith obviously was just enjoyable, because you just enjoyed. It was so fun. Training was fun. It wasn't too serious, but you got everything. I think the Fulham game away in the League Cup, we got beat 5-4. I scored a free kick at Craven Cottage, and it went to extra time. And I think it was Hyder Helgeson or either him or that McBride, the American striker, scored.
Oh yeah, McBride.
Yeah, I think he scored in like the last minute of extra time, and it was a tough one to swallow. That I think we lost 5-4, and we had to travel back from London at like early hours in the morning. And
I think was it Derby as well in maybe the round before that we'd beaten? I think.
No, I think we beat Crewe 5-0. I think they were a championship team, Crewe, and we pumped them 5-0 at home. Yeah,
the year before.
Yeah, but no, there was some good times. We had a couple of FA Cup. Nottingham Forest, we drew at home and got a replay at the City Ground. Took a good following there. So yeah, there's plenty of good times. Obviously, over 5 years, probably too many to remember. Really.
That's fair. That's fair.
I'm just going to say then, Scotty, obviously after Lincoln, you've had 2 good seasons at York, like you say. Obviously got promotion, then missed out promotion with Grimsby. Kind of just sum up that kind of spell just before you kind of drop further into the non-league and kind of politely sort out the rest of the playing days.
Yeah, it was a tough one, because I went to York, and then I was probably like thriving at York. I was playing just defensive centre midfield under Gary Mills. He'd come out of being coached by Brian Clough, so he was an old school. I've listened to a few bits on Nigel Clough, and obviously took on a few things that his dad did. And I remember the first game I went to York, and we were playing somewhere Ebbsfleet away or something, and we got on the coach, travelled down on the Friday, and Gary Mills just says, pull over to the coach. And we pulled over at a pub, and we all pottled off into this pub on Friday afternoon. He's like, right, lads, everyone get a beer. What do you want? And I were like, this, obviously I just come from Lincoln. I thought, is this a test? Like, try to trip us up. All the lads are sat, Michael Rankin sat there with Guinness, and they're all sat there supping beers. And I said, I'll just have a Coke, and it were his way, like it was all, but he created such a good team. At the bond that we had at York, even, we lads would go out on a Tuesday night. The year we got promoted to the League Two, we was unbelievable. We were playing so much good football, attacking football, but we had such a good group of players. Where every week lads would play golf together. We'd all go out for beers on a Tuesday night. As long as we respected it and didn't want messing about and stuff, it were brilliant. And then unfortunately I tore my ACL away at Luton in the semi-final of the FA Trophy. So I'd played every game for York that year, pretty much been captain most of the season. Got I cleaned up on the player of the years, and I tore my ACL and missed both Wembley appearances. So my nephew was mascot for one of them, and my son was mascot for the Luton game. So I had to watch in vain. But we got promoted, and then like I said, it probably ended me a little bit. That I come back from my ACL after about 5 months in League Two, and then not long after that, Gary Mills got sacked, and Nigel Worthington come in and changed the. He went to quite a more direct style of football, which didn't really suit. So, I moved on to Grimsby, and then like I say, I come to Bradford Park Avenue not long after that, and that was probably the spiral, really. Then going into part time, you lose your fitness levels. You're not training daily like you used to do, and it just becomes hard. It was more because I was so professional about how I used to train, and then I'd turn up to Park Avenue, there was like 8 players there, and it's like, well, where are the lads? And DC was like, oh well, this is a second job to them, not. They've got jobs, and this is a second sort of thing. And I couldn't really cope with that side of it, because you just try to be professional and do things right, and you just don't have any players. They're not. You haven't got a squad to do it properly. We played lower stuff. I think we played lower stuff away, and we all had to travel in cars on the Friday night. We were travelling down. Do you know what I mean? You remember it? And it was just like this. It just broke me mentally, I think. And then like I say.
I was just going to say, in terms of that, you kind of led on to what I want to ask is, you've been at the top of the game, you've worked your way in the EFL, you've had such a really good playing career, and then obviously, you know in yourself, don't you, kind of when you kind of winding down your playing days, so you try and, because you love the game, you want to play as high as you can, but that drop with respect to Bradford Park Avenue, but then also mentally, is that really tough on players like yourself who've been there and done it and got promotions and playoff victories?
I think so, yeah, and I think it's because you never lose that professionalism side of it. And once every time I crossed that white line, you always wanted to win. Whereas certain lads, it was just an hobby for them. They were getting, they were coming, had a job, they were coming and getting a couple of £100, having a laugh. They weren't bothered, win, lose or draw. You know, I just struggled. I just mentally struggled with that side of it. And unfortunately, I were earning good money at Park Ave, and some of these lads won't. So I was finding it hard to like. You know, in training, you're saying to lads like, "Come on, your standards need to be better. You got to work harder. You've got to do this." But then you're finding out that some of them are on £50 a week, and it's like, well, you know, I might be earning £450 a week, so it's like, it's not fair. It's not fair, do you know? So I took, and the same happened then when I left, and I sort of went to Ossett. I went to Ossett for a bit, and it was the same. There were lads picking up brown envelopes with like they'd been on bench, so they only got half the wages, and they were getting £12.50 or £20, and I were getting maybe £200, and they'd go out for warm-ups and they'd be shooting like Sunday League. They'd be all wacky ball into the net, you know, like I'm there trying to get warmed up properly and prepare for a game, and they were just, and then I questioned, I was driving home just saying like, it's not fair on me asking them to perform or to give more when they're getting paid peanuts, really. And that's
yeah, and I'm guessing obviously it's different and it's different levels, but also, you know, we speak to a lot of non-league people, and you'll know and I know that they do it for the love of the game, for various reasons. But it's obviously hard from where you've been, where you love the game, but you've been at that different end of it, haven't you?
Absolutely.
And how did it feel to kind of get towards that end and almost make that decision to hang up your boots? Did it feel the right time to do it, but also was it kind of a little bit of you felt you had to do it?
Yeah, I think it was a bit. There was a lot of things really, and I had a young family as well, and you know, even at Conference North level, you're traveling all over. Even in, you know, Evo 6 levels, you're traveling all over. So your weekends are taken up, and it wasn't even about the money. You know, like even there were certain clubs offering me, you know, £200-300 to go and play on a Saturday, and after I'd sort of walked away, and it was like, it's not about the money. Like I say, I just wanted to have time with my family, my kids, you know, take my kids out, we'll play football with them, watch them, and that's what it become. But like I say, I just realised, it wasn't fair on, you know, like I say, the kids who have got love for the game, even though I would try to help them and, you know, give them better ethics and benefits to be better players. Ultimately, they weren't there for that. They were there to enjoy themselves and have a laugh with the mates and earn a few quid, which I was fine with. And that's why I probably just stepped away, really. And I could have got into management, mate. Like I say, I had a few job interviews. I spoke to Ossett Town, and then I spoke to Frickley, and I sat and met Frickley about the job, and could have took over, but the budget was just, I just couldn't envisage. The budget was like £1,500 a week for a full squad of 16 players, and then they were like, if you want to, as manager, you have to take your wage out of the budget, and it was just like the levels too. It's too much work. You're just onto a hiding for nothing. Do you know what I mean? And it was like, and then once you have a bit more time out of it, and Farsley offered me a coaching job under Adam Lakeland, but they had no money. It was after DC and the other guy had left. Parsley, was it? They'd left. Yeah. They'd gone up a league, but then because they'd left because they were funding some of the money, they'd gone up a league and had a worse budget. So they were like, "Oh, can you? You know, we haven't really got any money. We'd love your experience to come in and coach." But if I look back now, if I could have afforded to sacrifice my time for free, it may have been it may have stood me in good stead to try and then move up the ladder and become a coach. But then once it passes a couple of years, I'm not really interested too much.
I'm going to ask that now. What does it look like now? Would it be something you'd be getting interested? Or you obviously you're like you got your apprenticeship, so you're happy just doing what you're doing?
Yeah, no, I'm happy just like I say, doing what I'm doing. You know, playing golf with my son. I've got 2 daughters, just enjoying family time, mate. I don't even really like watching football, mate, especially Premier League, like I say. And people always say to me, do you miss it? And I say, no, because I'd be sent off every week if I played. With VAR and you can't tackle anymore, can you?
I'll
you can't
testament to that, yeah.
You can't tackle anymore, mate. You put a tackle in that used to lift the crowd. At Lincoln, you'd play Green, you'd be able to smash someone that gives the crowd a lift. It doesn't always have to be a goal. Whereas nowadays, you're sent off, you make a tackle, you're sent off, So I don't miss that side. I don't miss, like I say, I probably won't spend much time on pitch nowadays. So.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, everyone, Scott. It's really good to see you again.
No, you too,
like I say, don't be a stranger again, and it's been really good insights. You've got some belting stories there to share across your times across the various clubs. So all the best, and
I appreciate
it. Really
mate,
speak in the future.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Scott.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, Scott.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers, thank you.
Bye.
There we go. Scott Kerr. Oh, that was. I'll be honest, that was slightly self-indulgent, but I'm not going to apologise for it, lads. I'm not.
That's fine. No, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I thought you might like Scott.
Yeah, very much so. I'll say, the fact that he's 240 odd games for Lincoln, and it was that period as well for me that I'd have been between the ages of 15 and 20ish when he was playing for the club. So yeah, he's just one of the prominent players from your youth sort of thing. So
yeah, and I think as well, like you said, we've said it right at the beginning, didn't we? That he started off his life at Leeds, and then with Gaz reminiscing at Bradford City. There's not many players that we speak to or know of that have played with the likes of Bino Carboni and Stan Collymore and Dan Petrescu. That Premier League days, which is, it does seem a million miles away at the moment from where City are, but that was a time where that really gripped both the city and the region, wasn't it? And Premier League in general, I think you'll be right, Gaz, to kind of testify for that, Bradford City were the small fish in a massive pond, but everybody was kind of, fighting for City as an underdog, wasn't they?
It was a funny time, Lou, because totally different to how it is now, because obviously Bulls were doing well as well in Super League, and City were thriving. Bradford as a city were buzzing from what I remember. I mean, I was doing my GCSE year, the year we got promoted to the Premier League, and it was just an ideal time to be that age, because you're going to games on your own for the first time, you're going to away games for the first time. It was just a fantastic experience. And then my 2 years doing my A-levels were in the Premier League, and then I sort of left after that to go away to uni. And by the time I come back, it all changed. It would all City weren't doing very well. They had financial problems, and then obviously the Bulls weren't doing as well as they were. And it was just a weird time. And to look back now, you would never think, it was just right. The City were thriving, and the fans were buzzing, and it was just a brilliant time. But hopefully it'll come back again. But I won't be holding my breath for it to be anytime soon, sadly.
Yeah, it's quite the climb for to get City back into the Premier League, as we said. We'll talk a little bit more about Bradford City later on. I'd like to say that we're joined by our second guest of the evening now, former Guiseley AFC, Halifax Town and Bradford Park Avenue defender and current Liversedge manager Ryan Toulson. Thanks for joining us, Ryan.
No problem at all, fellas.
How are you? You all right?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, busy day at work, and then obviously family and things like that. So yeah, but no, all good, thank you.
We appreciate you taking the time to come on. Obviously, you've been around the non-league scene in our area for many years. Obviously, I remember you well from your days at Guiseley in particular. I mean, how is it now, though? Just first question, are you stepping into the dugout, having taken that Liversedge job on a permanent basis?
Yeah, it's brilliant. Obviously, a great opportunity for myself. Having sort of stepped in at Eccleshill a couple of seasons ago, to then obviously stepping away from that and obviously being the assistant to Jonathan last year at the club, and then obviously building on from that, obviously sort of falling into taking interim charge, and then obviously being offered the job permanently. So obviously, yeah, delighted to take the role and hopefully have success moving forward.
And obviously, Tully, in that league, there's a lot of us in West Yorkshire kicking about. You got a few derbies under your belt as well, and
every week's a derby, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I know he played against us and scored for the first time in how many years, but I don't want to remind him of that.
Well, yeah. We won't go there. We won't go there.
No, we won't go there. But obviously, no, I know we've caught up during seasons as well, but is it exciting to kind of get your feet back under the desk as number one? Obviously, like you mentioned, your time at Eccleshill, but now feels like it for you the right time, does it again?
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously the right time. Obviously, spent a lot of time sort of learning my trade, sort of as player coach under Mark and Danny at Bradford. Obviously, that was obviously brilliant for me in terms of a big learning curve in terms of the on-field stuff, but also a lot of off-field stuff as well in terms of the behind the scene that goes on. So definitely sort of helped me towards obviously where I am today. Obviously, and then stepping into the Eccleshill job, stepped away, and maybe that might have been a little bit too early for myself. So obviously I gave it my all and tried my best there as well. And then obviously the local one of Liversedge came up, and it's obviously one of those on the doorstep. So I stepped into that as well as playing as well. Still obviously I believe that I had a lot to give playing wise. But yes, I think the time's right now. Obviously, I had a lot of experience and in terms of the off-field stuff now, and being able to undergo all of that, as well as obviously my coaching badges. So I feel that the time's right, and hopefully I'll make sure that I give my best for Liversedge.
And he says, as a Liversedge supporters that be watching this and listening, what do you want your team to look like, be like, and perform for for this season and beyond, really?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, we've just got to, at the moment, we're taking each game as it comes. But first and foremost, obviously, the lads know what I expect in terms of determination and effort on the pitch. As long as the lads come off the pitch and the fans know that every single one of them has put in the effort that the fans deserve to see, then I'll be happy first and foremost. But obviously, as we all know, it's results driven, and we've got to make sure that we turn around this season and turn around the form and put a good run of results together.
You're speaking like a manager already, Tully. Wow. Obviously, your next game, you got North Ferriby coming up and Bishop Auckland. So I mean, it's not the easiest start, is it, to your manager career? But at the same time, those that I'm guessing are the games that you want to get stuck into because you know what you're capable of doing. You've shown that already this season. Yeah,
definitely. I'll be honest, there's no easy games in this league. There's a lot of good teams, and week in, week out, you're looking at results, and one team will beat another. But I think obviously if you can put a good run together, obviously Park Avenue have shown that recently. Do you know, we went there earlier in the season and had a good result, but then off the back of that, we've been a little bit too inconsistent. Whereas if you put a run of a couple of games together, you're obviously heading in the right direction. So yeah, there is some tough results. Obviously Saturday, again will be a tough game against Ferriby, and Stocksbridge was the same. But obviously after the result on Saturday, the lads have got to really take the positives from that, playing 75 minutes with 10 men, Crookie going in goal and being in front right up until the last kick of the game. It was devastating. It felt like a loss. But obviously in the position that we were in during the game, we've got to be positive and take the point away from the game.
100%, and also you've, as well as looking to strengthen on the pitch, you've strengthened off the pitch. You know, you brought Blake Campbell in, and those who may listening, you know, used to be at Avenue Academy and most recently had a recruitment at Wakey, kind of Blake's now with you, isn't it, to help shape that squad on the pitch?
Yeah, definitely. Something obviously that I've looked into. Obviously spoke to Blake over the last couple of weeks in terms of how we can progress that forward, and it just takes a little bit of pressure away from myself, obviously, in terms of that recruitment side. Obviously, he's got a good knowledge of the players in and around, obviously, the non-league, as well as, obviously, myself and other contacts that we've got. But, obviously, being able to identify the type of player that, obviously, I want, he can go into the market and delve right into it and put that list to me. And then, obviously, we can make a move, obviously, speaking to a couple of people sort of at the moment, obviously a couple in the pipeline, and hopefully if we get those over the line, it'll really, really strengthen us. Obviously, since the first game that I took over at Brighouse, when obviously Jonathan left, I've lost 5 players from that team. 5 obviously lads that obviously added real quality to the squad. But in terms of that, obviously the lads that are still here have shown that obviously they want to play for the club and they want to play for me, and that's a real positive for the club moving forward. Now it's our job, obviously, to put that stability back in the team, and add some some of the characters and players that we want to move forward, a little bit of experience, as well as adding a little bit of youth to that as well. So yeah, we want to add that stability to take the club forward. So yeah, those conversations are ongoing. Obviously some might come in for the short term, but obviously we're wanting to add players that want to be there long term, and obviously see the club sort of is in its real light for what it really is and where it wants to go.
Where can it go? I guess because obviously, you know, a couple of seasons back they got to the MPL, to the Northern Prem, and obviously couldn't quite sustain it. Where do you think you can take Liversedge?
Well, obviously it's very, very open. Obviously, in terms of the club and the structure, obviously the structure's there. Obviously, trying to put things in place behind the scenes to obviously move the club forward as best as possible. Obviously, take one season at a time, but obviously, if that continues, there's no reason why. Obviously, we can't climb those leagues. And like I've spoke to a few people recently. Obviously, this moment in time, things are not going to happen overnight. You know, I do believe that it's going to be a little bit of a rebuild in terms of players going out. There might still be players that want to go, but obviously, in terms of that rebuild, obviously that's my job to do that along with the rest of the team. But yeah, in terms of moving forward, the club's got ambition. As have a lot of the local teams, and obviously you come across some stumbling blocks, but we'll take that as it comes. So we'll take it sort of short term. You know, we've got to get that stability back and push us in the right direction for this season, and then build into next season and take us obviously to where we want to be. There's no doubt about it. We're a club that wants to be in and around the playoffs, pushing for promotion. You know, and I wouldn't have taken the job if I didn't believe that I couldn't try and achieve that. So I am ambitious. You know, that's where I want to be. I want to be striving for the best, and that's what I'll always try and do.
Yeah, no, I know what you like, Tully. So yeah, I mean, it sounds exciting, and fingers crossed it works out for you, mate. Just a final one before we'll let you go. Obviously, there's a couple of teams in a region that you've played for, like the Guiseley and Halifax. I mean, you've watched Bowes and Bosch nearly work the magic in the FA Cup. It must be almost heartbreaking, but proud to see some of your mates and good contacts around the game to do so well. And it's something that I'm guessing you in your early days can strive to do as well.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, still speak to Bowes and Bosch more or less really frequently. Obviously, picking the brain still. But it's great to see how well they've done this year. Obviously, again, they've done pretty similar at Guiseley and brought in some real quality. Obviously, the likes of Jake, obviously that we all know, and obviously Moki, Will Longbottom that was at Park Avenue as well. So they've got some real quality in the squad, and that's what they've done. They've added stability to the team, and put together a really good squad. So it was obviously I spoke to them Friday before they travelled, and obviously they did it right, and we had a little reminisce about obviously the days when we were travelling together, and it's one of those, and obviously the club have done it right and give the lads the best opportunity. They took it ever so close, and obviously I texted them after the game, just obviously gutted for them.
Yeah, no, 100%. And finally, your time at Halifax. I mean, one of our guys who can't make it tonight apparently has a signed shirt of yours in his room. So I mean, you're famous at some point, Tully. So, but obviously your time at Fax as well, you know, close to the playoffs. And I know you had a good time there, didn't you, as well? And it's another club that is, you know, let's be honest, hasn't got the biggest budget, but you know, he's almost fighting against the top teams and doing ever so well.
Yeah, definitely. I always look out for the scores. Obviously, I had a really good time there. Made my debut there under Chris Wilder, which was, you know, brilliant, and probably taking some bits of how he was as a manager when I was coming through as a young lad. And obviously, we've got a couple of them in our squad, so sort of taking little bits from him as well in terms of sort of how we're managing the players and the group and things like that. But always keeping an eye out, and like you say, obviously not on the biggest budget, but obviously pushing and striving for that playoff position, and obviously looking at the table, it's looking good. And obviously again, it comes on sort of that consistency of performances, and hopefully they can continue the form as well and build on that.
Fab. Cheers, Tully. Much appreciated, mate. We'll get you back on come April when you're hopefully I drive safe in the league, and we'll catch up again after your first season in charge. But thanks, Tully. Appreciate that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, fellas.
Cheers, Ryan. Thanks for coming on, mate.
Cheers,
thank you.
That's Ryan Toulson, the Liversedge boss, and look, we've talked about the fact that derby's pretty much every other week. It's going to be a really interesting season, I think, for Tully, isn't it, Lou?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, listen, I speak to Tully a lot, and I'll never forget him scoring that goal this season and his reaction at the end of the game when he come and looked at me and was like, I've not seen you score a goal in years. But listen, deserved. He is one of the hardest working people I've seen in the game. He loves the game. He's very determined to make it work for himself and the club where he's at. So I think Liversedge have got the right person in charge for where they are at the moment. He has got contacts. He will bring people, and he will probably change how they play a little bit to make them real tough to beat. But I think it sometimes these occasions can happen where you do lose some of that players out your squad, but it gives an opportunity for Tully to kind of rebuild, like he says. And I think Sedge will be fine this year now under Tully. I think they'll give it a real good go. I think they'll surprise a few teams. It's going to be, I think, quite painful short term, I'd say in the next month, up until the festive period. But I think for the last 3-4 months, I'd expect Sedge to hopefully pull away and keep safe in this division.
Yeah, their next game, as mentioned, was North Ferriby at home on Saturday, and then they travel to Bishop Auckland, as you say. So it's not the easiest of starts, it's fair to be said, or not I say starts, the easiest of runs coming up for Liversedge. In terms of the rest of the non-league scene, Lou, obviously we touched on Guiseley and the FA Cup, nearly heroics, and look, it's been talked about all over social media since the weekend. The whole topic of the cup replays and scrapping the replays has really come back very, very quickly into the spotlight, I suppose. But just talking about the kind of the performance and the result they got there, they're a really good account of themselves and forced penalty kicks in the end. And at one point, when Joe Cracknell saved 2 on the bounce, you kind of thought, hey, is it going to be their day? But it just sadly wasn't to be.
An unbelievable performance for a club with the greatest respect of Guiseley in the Northern Premier Division.
4 divisions between them.
Yeah.
4 divisions.
And that would have been, I hate to say it for town fans, that would have probably been the biggest upset of the round for Guiseley to go through away from home as well. I mean, it's one of those situations where you never expected it to happen, even going 1-0 down to, still bring it back to 1-1. I mean, the scenes in, I'm listening to our friends at Radio Leeds and the commentary with Lucas Dunstan. Yeah. We've all heard it already. We had Lucas on 2 weeks ago. I mean, he was nearly on the pitch with a microphone. Monty bless him, which was amazing to hear. But it's such a story that what they've done is remarkable. Again, coming through some real tough ties. Scunthorpe, Kidderminster, taking Stevenage to penalties is unreal. And I know, listening to Bowers' interview at the end of the game, he still felt hard done by, which shows the quality that they've got. At Nethermore. And listen, I think it's one of those where it'll be tough to swallow, I think. Yes, with that replay argument, but also just a man in how it's lost and the energy that's spent both physically and emotionally about that, I think could just hang over him a tiny bit. But this will show how good Guiseley really are now, because that is going to be a bit of a hurdle to overcome. They've got the right players, the right people in charge to overcome that. But yeah, I mean, what a story that would have been. I mean, I know we're trying to speak to a few to get a couple on in the next week or two, and it would be fab to get some of those guys on to just reminisce about the time there and how they see that season going, because now it is a bread and butter as a league. It always has been, but now even more so. They've shown what they're capable of doing, of holding a League One team away from home in the FA Cup on the day. So in fairness, it can beat anybody in that division now.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, a busy run of games to come for the Lions going forward. MPL East, Lou, again, a really busy weekend of action. And to be fair, the results weren't that bad at all for our teams, apart from Ponty. Avenue drew 1-0 against Bishop Auckland. Unfortunately, Brighouse did lose against North Ferriby, but the new results, Emily, victors again, chasing Cleethorpes now. That's going to be a real tussle. James Walshaw getting his first win as manager at Ossett United.
Tully will know him well. Ollie Johnson's gone to Ossett United as well, which is a really interesting move. Which is OJ still putting on his boots, which is amazing. And obviously Sedge, unfortunately, just missing out on that win. But it's really tight in that table at the moment in the East. So, I mean, Cleethorpes are top with 36, and then Emily on 34, having played a game more. But then, the teams that are separated, Avenue are just outside now, the playoffs on 6. And then you're looking a little bit towards mid-table, and towards the bottom is the likes of Ossett, who have now got, like I say, Wally in charge. They'll probably try and rebuild. Keep saying it. It's a crazy division. Like Tully said, it's one of those where it's a cliche, but anybody can beat anybody. And I expect some of those teams to either go on unbeaten runs like Avenue at the moment and 9 unbeaten. At some point that will change. But it's how long can you keep that momentum going, especially now into a busy period coming up to December. We all know as football fans, December is one of the most crucial points as a football fan and a football club to get points on the board. So if you're going to time it right, this is your time to hit form. Yeah,
Pontefract Colliery is the only NPL East side in action. Tomorrow night they travel to Belford Town. One of the things about from the NPL East, Lou, from Bradford Park Avenue is a change alongside Craig Elliott in the dugout.
Yeah, tonight's been announced that John McDermott, who's worked with Craig before, previously at Buxton, Matlock, and quite honestly at Boston as well, has come as his first team assistant. Vil Powell, who was helping Craig out at the time, seems to have pursued another role elsewhere. Be honest, not seeing where that is yet. Yet to be announced. Yeah, time will tell on that. But I mean, what I will say is that while in his short time at Avenue, he's had a big impact on the playing squad. Very vocal on the sidelines, both in training and on match days. So I think he will be missed by Craig and the players. But also at the same time, it shows the contingency that's in place now with Craig there, that he's ready to bring his man in straight away when that opportunities come to us. So yeah, it's a blow, but also he's now with somebody who he knows inside out. They know each other, how each other work. And he probably will be knowing what Craig's like, just a very seamless transition into one person leaving and the next person coming in. So yeah, listen, it's never a dull moment at Avenue. There's always some kind of news. It was unexpected to me as well. So just one of those another days at the Horsefall.
Yeah, we'll keep close out and see where Bill Powell ends up as well, taking a senior job somewhere. I'm just going to jump up a couple of leagues, actually. Almost missed them out in Farsley Celtic in the Conference North. And look, when Pav Singh kind of took over in the first team management role, it started all right. But now, with everything else around the club at the moment, and I'm going to be honest, the fiasco with the stadium and the lack of pitch and the home games being played at Buxton, some many, many miles away now. It's starting to slide a bit. 2-0 defeat for them at home against Darlington.
Yeah, I've seen the comments on Pav following the Darlington game, and for those who are unaware, we announced it last week, pretty much when we were just going live with the show, that Farsley announced that they were ground sharing until the end of 2024 with Buxton, which is 70 miles away, pretty much from Farsley.
Beautiful area, but miles away.
Miles away from Farsley. So again, it's one of those situations where we're waiting to see the progress that's being made. It was announced last week in a statement that stuff is hopefully going to get sorted out. But on Saturday we had a bench of 2 players. I believe some of the staff may have not been there as well, according to some of the reports. So I mean, it's one of those situations where it's really tough being a Farsley fan.
There's 1 or 2 players that have left, haven't they, since they've cited the reasons they've not been able to commit to that travelling for home games. That have been,
I mean, Tom Allen, who was the mainstay at the back, he's now gone to Brid. He played at Brid on Saturday. And listen, as a player, you expect to play at home. You don't expect to play 70 miles away when you've agreed to play somewhere. And listen to Scotty earlier, you might have a young family, and that whole circumstance just goes into a mix, doesn't it? So it's tough being a Farsley fan. I see comments that, I'm even getting messages just even on social media from some fans that kind of just wanting to know what's going on. And being honest, I don't. But at the same time, it's tough. It's not easy when you're a football fan. You're going through these times at the moment, especially when you haven't had a home game for months, and you don't know when that next home game possibly may be. all you can possibly do as a football fan is just stick by your club and stick by the players and the management, because we know what football's like. It works in cycles, and Farsley at some point will turn it around. When that is, we don't know yet, but we will turn it around. They're doing remarkably well to be in the National League North as the size of a club that they are. They're a village club. But yeah, I mean, the game on Saturday, you only have to look at the squad where it looks tough going at the moment. But listen, it's one of those situations where whatever's happening off the pitch is happening off the pitch. There's only so much football fans can possibly change about that. But what I think the fans probably need as well is just a few wins. It's not going to make them feel a whole lot better about everything, but losing the last three, they've got a game away at Kings Lynn, which just not get any easier.
I mean, that's almost as far as the home games at the moment.
I mean, it don't get any easier after that, because they go Kidderminster, so you just when it rains, it pours. But listen, it's one of those where fans got to stick with them, because the good times will come at Farsley, and they're in the National League North. It's a dream with respect to Farsley playing the likes of Kidderminster and clubs like that still. So it will come, but yeah, it looks tough from the outside, doesn't it?
Dropping down into the NCL, Lou, what's caught your eye this weekend?
So Silsden at the moment extending a lead at the top of division by 5 points. Have played a game more than Golker, but Silsden absolutely flying. Saw at the beginning of the season, a couple of the games they're doing well, and finally I think you're seeing that team come together and really show that division what they're all about. But again, we keep saying it, teams are still in and around the playoffs. Golker, Fackley, Albion. There's a couple of games happening tomorrow as well. I think Campion at home to Goole. Campion do have a load of games in hand
as well.
And Frickley, yeah. So, I mean, you'd probably expect Campion to get something out of that, with Goole really struggling at the bottom end of the table. But, yeah, it's extremely tight. I mean, you look from even from like 6 of where Hallam to the top of the league, there's just about 11 points. So it's tight at that division at the moment, and it'll only get even tighter as kind of the days and months go by, because you are going to get postponements and abandonments, and those games will have to take place at some point in the midweek. So if you can get the games in now, likes of Penistone have got 19 racked up already, it's a bonus. Because you are playing catch up at some point in this league. But yeah, I mean, listen, we spoke to Foz at Fackley doing so well. They're fourth, and you can just see that table is starting to come together, and it's going to have some real tough battles in the final few months.
Yeah, you're talking the fixtures. You look at Campion, who are currently down in 11th place, 19 points. However, they've only played 12 games. Parkgate, one place, one played 17. There's a whole host of teams that have played 4 games more. So it's one of those. If Campion, it's a big ask. If they can win the games that they've got in hand, though, they will get themselves right back into that mix. But it's if that run of fixtures and that busy run that they've got coming up might take its toll on the legs. But as it is, going very, very well. What else caught your eye across the NCL divisions?
So at the moment, like I say, in Division 1, Horbury is still leading it, 8 points with a game in hand, absolutely flying. South Leeds have really catapult themselves up into the playoffs in 4th. I know they've recruited a couple of players recently, the likes of Owen Murphy, who used to be at Albion, Mohamed Kaba there as well. So they're doing really well. Ilkley slipped out the playoffs at the moment, and it's still tough going at Yorkshire Amateurs, but Wakefield are the ones at the moment that seem to be on form. New management in charge.
4 wins on the bounce.
Yeah, apart from the FA Vars, but yeah, I mean the scoring goals are fun. I think with 14, 17, 21 goals in the past 4 league games, which shows kind of where they're going. A couple of new signings as well has really pushed them up. And listen, after quite a poor start to that season, they are playing catch up, but I'd expect them still to be in the playoffs at the end of the season.
Yeah, there are only 2 games in hand on Allesley Recreation that occupy that final playoff place as it stands, and they are only 4 points off. So it does seem that the change of management, and certainly, as I say, plenty of players that have come in over the last few weeks. I think there's 4 on the 1st of November alone, but it seems to be working for them. And look, what is it? Featherstone Rovers Stadium, is it the Millennium Stadium? If you want to see goals, that seems to be the place to go at the moment, with 21 in the last 4 league games. Northwest counties, how are the sides over there doing for Barlick and Steeton and Route 1 Rovers?
Yeah, so I think obviously Stevenage had a big crowd against Droylsden. I believe Droylsden took over 150 fans with him to make an occasion. Apparently, according to our friend Josh there, I think Droylsden one of the best teams that they've played at that level, and absolutely flying. So Stevenage and Route 1, unfortunately, in terms of the league tables, stuttering at the wrong end of the table, both 15th, 16th respectively. Barnoldswick in the Prem, bang on mid-table in 12th at the moment. So you'd expect them to be thereabouts and may just not have enough, I don't think, to reach the playoffs. But I think with the quality teams in that division, you only have to look at Bury, who have got, 6 games in hand, but are 9 points adrift from top of the league, Rams bottom. With the calibre of players Bury have got, that's a really, really tough division to get out of. And I think if Barnoldswick will be kind of in and around the playoffs, I think they'll be quite happy with that.
It is very much a league that the ones at the top, those sides at the top are very, very good. The ones at the bottom are struggling. Barlick, as you say, currently 12th at the moment. I think they've got 30 points in, but they're already 21 points clear of second bottom Prestwich Hayes and 23 points clear of Collins. So there's no, on the face of it at least, no real threat to Barlick in terms of going down. It's just whether they can make up what is currently a 9-point gap to the sides that occupy the playoffs and the FC Isle of Man. But as you say, Rams bottom 50 points, Chadderton 44, Lower Breck 42, and then Bury, with all their money, resources, and weekly home attendances of in excess of 3,500. It just goes to show that even at the Northwest Counties level, big crowds and some good caliber players doesn't guarantee your results in non-league football.
No, they've got some outstanding players, and I know that they have been shuffling the squad a little bit recently. I think they made a couple of signings only last week, and there's caliber of players on the bench who would probably walk into a lot of teams in this division and a division above that, and possibly the division above that as well. So, listen, I think Bury will probably do it. I think they've got a strong enough squad, a real good infrastructure set up there. But again, it's one of those where sometimes you don't want to be playing catch up because you've still got to put the points on the board. You can have all the games in hand, and for me, I keep saying it every year that it's one of the worst things you can have is games in hand, because you've got to make them count. And if you start losing those games in hand, it becomes a real chain around your neck. So yeah, it's one that they can do. But for Barlick's perspective, it's one of those where they can look at it and give it a right good go, because I don't think there's any danger of going down. If they give it a right good go, then there could be an outside chance of getting in the playoffs.
Absolutely. Anything else across the 19? I think we've probably covered everything there, haven't we, Lou?
We covered everything,
yeah. Halifax Town had a weekend off with not being an FA Cup action. And, of course, that leads us then to kind of rounding off with the league sides that were in the FA Cup action, Bradford City and Huddersfield Town. All I'm going to say, Mr. Downs, is Chesham 0, Lincoln 4. That, my friend, is how you put a lower league side out of the FA Cup, unlike you did with Tamworth. Downs, there was a comment very early on, which I still think is utter ridiculous nonsense, to be honest. Lee Tuto, is it time for Michael Duff to go? He embarrassed our club on Friday. No. FA Cup upsets happen, is the simple term. Don't get me wrong. Town were poor. I did watch it and think, Jesus, this is a poor-looking Town side. But at the same time, I think a lot of credit has got to go to Tamworth, the way they performed. They really upped the game. And look, Lou, we said it when the draw was made. I think we did a show just after the FA Cup draw was made, and we warned Downsy about the pitch and going to somewhere like Tamworth on a Friday night, and somewhere with the long tour of Tom Tonks.
And they're back-to-back promotions, wasn't it, before this season as well? So they're on a roll, aren't they? Sorry, Lou, to jump in there. I just wanted to get that stat in.
No, it's a fair point. It's a very fair point.
We did warn him, though. We did warn him.
Yeah, we did, didn't we? But it was one of those situations where, and I said this, didn't it? And I do feel sorry for Danzy, because when you're in that situation, that's not easy to take. And I know we can have a bit of banter between us, but as a football fan, when you lose to a team with all will of the world in a part-time team like Tamworth, that's a hard one to take, especially where you are. But I wouldn't. We've
all been there at some point.
Oh, we've all been there. Yeah, we've all been there. And I think from Lee's comment, I appreciate there's obviously that anger and frustration. I'd actually look at the players for me. Them players were more than good enough to beat that Tamworth team. I thought some of them just didn't seem to turn up. I actually said to Downs in the chat, didn't we, that I think Headley and IPN were probably one of the bright sparks, and I know they got brought off, but and that for me showed where they were in that moment in time where some of the younger lads stepped up. I thought we could have been a lot quicker working through the lines from the back to the to the midfield. Sorry, it seemed quite laboured and they hit the diagonals, and that just wasn't working. And listen, Michael Duff was completely honest. He was very fair at the end. He was not, quoting anything around that to say that they didn't deserve it. He was absolutely saying they deserved everything they got on that. They've prepped well, they've trained well, they're a good enough team. Sometimes this is what happens in the FA Cup, doesn't it? But I wouldn't say he's embarrassed the club. It feels like an embarrassment at that moment in time. But I think some of the players have got to take a lot of accountability for that game, because there's only so much you can do, and once you go over that white line, it's a different game. I mean, Gaz, you were there at City and Aldershot, and you guys are 1-0 down, but you still got the job done. And sometimes you got to count on a place to do the job, haven't you?
Yeah, I thought. I mean, I can only talk about but I didn't see the Huddersfield game. I saw the goal. I didn't see, which obviously was, should we say, controversial in itself in a way. If it wasn't really controversial, but it was a strange goal, wasn't it? The way the keeper seemed to punch it into his own goal.
The damn thing is, if he doesn't touch it either, it can't count as a goal.
Well, no, if it goes straight in, it can't.
But
no.
This is the goalkeeping instinct, I suppose, of I've got to deal with it. But actually, weirdly, not that you ever would think to, but if he just lets it go over his head straight from the throw-in, it can't count as a goal. I'll be honest, I don't know what rule and bylaw it would that would have resulted in. Corner, I think. I don't know, probably not. But it's just one of those freak situations where Maxwell goes for it, gets it horribly wrong, and because he's touched it, it's the free goal that wins the game for Tamworth.
Yeah, I mean, I like I say, I only saw the goal, so I can't comment on the game. I can only comment on what you guys said in the group chat. I went to the Bradford game on Saturday and was speaking to a few people that had seen the game, and they all said the same as you, that like it was just the players, Huddersfield's players. A lot of them just weren't at it, and when you're not at it against a team like that, on a pitch like that, in the FA Cup, with a guy with a throw like that, and a team that's had 2 back-to-back promotions, this can happen. Mm-hmm. I think when you're talking about Town and Michael Duff, this has been a rumbling thing all season, hasn't it? And we talked about it last week
Yeah, we did. It
all comes down to the expectation and what Huddersfield fans think they should be doing. And I think there just needs to be a little bit of a reality check in that, they're not going to storm League One. League One has some good teams in it. And the way Huddersfield have been in the Championship over the last few years shows that they're not a side that can go down without spending a fortune like Birmingham have done and storm the division. And I expect them to get in the playoffs. I said at the start of the season, I think they'll get the playoffs. But this has been building every time they get a few bad results. I know they had this, what did Downsy call it, a disaster? Not did he call it a crisis? And you argued with them about it not being a crisis when they lost 3 or 4 games. But yeah, I just don't think that you can call a 1-0 defeat in the FA Cup. It's not something that you should be sacking your manager over. These results happen. I mean, Bradford went to Chelsea and beat Chelsea at Chelsea a few years ago. That didn't mean Mourinho should be sacked. We beat Villa and Arsenal in the League Cup. That didn't mean Arsene Wenger should have been sacked. Okay. Just have to look at how these things, the season as a whole. And like I say, I think they're in the playoffs. They will get the playoffs. And I can only speak from, like I say, Bradford City point of view. And sacking managers gets you nowhere. And we've learned the hard way at City that you have to allow a manager to build some time. And that's what I'm hoping Alexander will do at City. And I think that's what Duff will do at Huddersfield. I think he will get them up, whether that be this season or next season.
I think as well, from our perspective, I mean, I know it's a massive if, but that game gets forgotten about if Town get promoted this season. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. And that's how fickle we are as football fans. I mean, Duff could lead Huddersfield Town to promotion, whether it's in the top 3 or in the playoffs, and everybody will be going back, remember that game at Tamworth? No, not really. Don't really matter now, does it, when they get back promoted potentially to the Championship? I think you're absolutely spot on, guys. I think there's a little bit of reality check. I think there's going to be a reality check on the training pitch this week. I think Duff will hit home a little bit with that. Is possibly not saying he will save this, but it's almost a bit of maybe not as good as what we might think we are. And actually, this is sometimes what you need to kickstart your season a little bit. And You know, they're still doing well in the league, and you're right that there's so many good teams in that division. So I don't think, at the time it feels embarrassing. I get it, 100% get it from fans' perspective, but it's one of those where it could come actually quite good for you at the end of the season.
Yeah. It's how you react to it, isn't it? You either go. This goes one or two ways. You either put your chest out and you knuckle down on the training ground and you make sure that you win on Saturday in the league, or you sulk and you cry and you whinge and you say, "Well, we're embarrassed," and you hide in your shell and you lose the next couple of league games. Yeah. I think they'll react the right way. They came out of that little bad run that they had in the league and turned it round. I think Duffel will get them sorted. I really do. And like I say, if they don't go up this year, I think they'll go up next year. They'll finish in the playoffs. I'm fairly sure of that.
Yeah, it'd be not an easy place for them to go actually on Saturday. Wait, Crawley Town, who, like I say, if you say they beat Lincoln a couple of weeks or so ago at Crawley 3-0, they really performed on that occasion.
Hasn't their form suffered though since Lindsay left? I haven't followed it closely, but I did notice they had a bit of a nosedive, didn't they?
It had, and then they beat Lincoln 3-0.
Sorry, mate.
to put it simply, their form had nosedive. I looked at that and thought, we should be going there and winning.
Yeah.
And then got battered 3-0, and I think they might have taken another positive result since then. And typically, actually, in terms of the FA Cup draw itself, Lincoln beating Chesham tonight means we'd have to go back to bloody Crawley. So I'm not exactly thrilled with the way that draw panned out. Gaz, Bradford City, as you say, you were up there on Saturday for the game against National League Aldershot, and look, you got through it and progressed to the second round.
Yeah, it's the first time we've actually won a game in the FA Cup for quite a while. I think it was 2020, I think I read. It's a few years ago anyway. We keep getting knocked out in the first round. To be honest, speaking to smaller shop fans in the pub before the game, I travelled over and went to the game. They were saying that they've been terrible in the league. They've got no height at the back. They were saying if Verdane Oliver plays, because we were saying Verdane Oliver will play, they'll rest Andy Cook. They were worried that he'd dominate, and they were a little bit worried to be onto a bit of a hiding, because obviously we were saying, is there a chance of what happened last year when you put 7 past Swindon? Can it be done again? And they were saying we've lost our best players, blah 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 blah. But the way the game started, you could see that what they had said about them playing good football was absolutely spot on. Aldershot played some really nice football, and for periods in that first half, City struggled to cope with it, and the FA Cup, as it always is, can be a bit of a leveler, although in reverse form, because it was us that were more direct and they were the tide playing football. Having said that, how good they were on the ball, we still had the better chances in the first half. I don't know if you've seen the goal that Aldershot scored, but Verdane Oliver loses it in the middle of the pitch, and it's one ball to the guy on the edge of the box, and it's a great finish past Sam Walker into top corner. And they deserved a goal. But like I say, even though they were playing good football, I think we were the better side first half. Second half, we just tightened up a few things. Callum Kavanagh came in off the left and went into the number 10, which I've not seen him play as a number 10 before. But he ran the show really second half, and our quality sort of told, and we got over the line 1-3-1. Verdane Oliver got a goal. Callum Kavanagh himself got a goal, got the third one. Which I think should do him the world of good, because he's not scored. He hadn't scored yet this season. He looked really good when he came in at the end of last season. He was forming a nice partnership with Andy Cook and playing sort of a little bit deeper off the left, but linking up well with the left wing back and Bobby Point and Tyreek Wright kind of thing. But he was struggling for a goal this year, and he missed he has missed a couple of easy chances. He missed an easier one than the one he scored on Saturday, which is often the case, and then he got a tough chance and slammed it in at the near post. So I'm hoping that he's over his fitness issues. He's definitely been pressing and putting the energetic performances in that we saw last season. He just needed a goal, so hopefully he can kick on now. And yeah, like you say, FA Cup, it's just about getting the result, and hopefully we can do that again at Morecambe in round 2.
I was about to say, lucky old you, mate, as well, to be handed that little treat of a cup tie as well away. Back to Morecambe for you. You can go back for those fish and chips that you didn't have the first time round. Yeah,
I went in the league the other week, and it was at the period of time when we were really struggling with injuries. We didn't have any fit centre-backs, and we were playing 4-4-2 with 2 centre-halves, and they gave us a good game, did Morecambe, to be fair. They hadn't won at that point. I think they have won a game since then. They're still bottom of the league, but they have won a game. Maybe the FA Cup will be the break that they need from the league, and they'll be, it often is the case for teams that are struggling. From a City point of view, you could probably do without the Derek Adams factor in the FA Cup. You probably do without going away in the FA Cup. What you say in these early rounds is you want to be at home. But we've got to go there and put in a better performance than we did in the league and make sure that we get the job done, because obviously you get into round 3 and you can draw anybody, can't you? And it can be a game changer financially and on the pitch as well.
Go on, Lou. I thought you were going to come in there.
No, it's such a big carrot in the second round. I mean, I'm not wowed by the draw. I thought the draw was pretty poor, but obviously from a City perspective, I mean, obviously throwing you guys were Lincoln as well, but the second round, it's a real big incentive now we need to go and win. And obviously, Morecambe are going to be in a situation where we know the situation has been there. City, obviously, kind of got the cup exploits in the past, but League Two club, you could potentially get a Premier League. There's such a big jump, isn't it, now after that second round? And I think even though you, again, using that bread and butter cliche about your season being that, but that second round game becomes really important potentially this isn't talking about the lifeblood of a club, but this is actually something that would really do your club the world of good potentially for this season, both on and off the field. It's something that you've not budgeted for. But imagine, listen, it could happen. Bradford could get Leeds. It could happen, and that it's a big thing for just football fans. I think in general want to see your teams play. Your elite clubs, haven't you?
It's potentially something for the fan base, isn't it, as well, and especially for Bradford and the kind of the unrest that there's been, and almost the divide that's been within the fan base over the last 8. Well, how far back do you want to go, Gaz? But I was going to say, like, the last 18 months in particular, over the course of Alexander's tenure, it's never seemed quite all together. Whereas if you can get through the second round of the Cup and get that plum tie at home against a Leeds or a Man United or something, it's those sort of ties that can where everybody is kind of pulling in the same direction, isn't it?
Yeah, I am hopeful. Like I spoke on the podcast last week and maybe the one before that I'm hopeful fans are a little bit more united at the moment. Obviously, that comes with time and not going on winning run, losing run like we have done in the past. And when you don't go loads of games without a win, yeah, fans are quieter and people become more united. But just going back to what a cup run can do, yeah, financially, obviously. I remember going back 11 years now, no, 12 years now, when obviously we had the League Cup run under Parkinson. There was debate at the time about whether the cup run was affecting our league form, but I think that can work both ways, because I think come the end of the season, when we'd gone on and had that, really it helped us. And when we had lost the League Cup final, we went on an amazing run and got into the playoffs. So I think it can affect your league form in both ways. I think you obviously hope that it has a positive effect and you have a good run in the league. But the financial thing's the main thing. And obviously the players as well, because if they've got that carrot that you talk about, it's not just a financial carrot for the club, but players could have the opportunity to go to play at these grounds that they've not had the opportunity or they otherwise wouldn't get. You're looking at players that maybe have come up from non-league or like have only played all the career in League One and League Two, and suddenly they have this opportunity that, if City players beat Morecambe or the Lincoln players beat Crawley, they could draw a Man United or a Liverpool or an Arsenal, and they're going to make lifelong memories. It's like we talked about with Scott at the beginning of the show, right back early on in the show. He remember. No one can take away from him that he played against Frank Lampard and Emmanuel Petit, and that is probably a highlight of his career. He got man of the match that day. He was probably inspired to play against those players and came out on top in his individual battles. So it's a massive carrot, and it's a massive carrot both financially, both individually, and for the team.
Yeah, absolutely. We were probably going to go into the FA Cup a little bit more than we have, really, in terms of the whole situation regarding the replays. But I'll be honest, because of the fact that I spent a long time talking to Scott Kerr about his Lincoln days, we probably don't have time to fully go into it. So let's kind of lean towards wrapping up and finishing really with Leeds United, and obviously Jay and Brown are out here, but a comfortable afternoon's work for them in the end, 3-0 against Plymouth Argyle.
Yeah, comfortable. By all accounts, probably one of the most comfortable Leeds victories that we've seen in a long, long time, if ever. Kind of their perspective in the talking points were conceded 3 shots on goal in the last 4 games, and that was all against Watford. Jay, who will be joining us back shortly on the roundtables, which is good for all you Leeds fans and football fans alike. You know, he's saying head and shoulders above a majority in this league. Tanaka's a joke in a good way.
He's
Joe Rothwell is better than apparently any ex-Lincoln player ever.
We've already had one ex-Lincoln player who's better than Joe Rothwell on the show tonight, mate. So yeah.
But so yeah, I think the story, the moment at Ellen Road is that things are good. I think that, you know, those are the 3 ways to sum it up. Yes, they still trail Sunderland at the moment by 3 points. And that could have been potentially different had that Melier shock and not gone in. But listen, I think the table is something we can probably get into a little bit more next week when our teams are back in league action. For me, the tables are starting to take a little bit more shape now. You know, we're seeing City being in around the playoffs, Huddersfield being in around the playoffs, Leeds challenging for the title. That's what a lot of us were expecting this season, and it's already starting to kind of come to play with over a quarter of the season gone. Listen, I think Leeds are going to be up there. They've got a tricky game on Wednesday against Millwall. Never easy to go, especially midweek. But if
especially when they've just beaten Burnley, they've just beaten Burnley as well, haven't they? You know, it shows what they can do. It should be, but that could stand Leeds in good stead if they look what's happened to Burnley there and just reality check. We need to be on it. We need to be on it against Millwall.
Yeah.
100%, mate. And I think it's a good indicator to where Leeds are in a barometer of where they are against possibly Burnley. I know Millwall are not going to play exactly the same, and the game's going to be very different. But you know, if Leeds do beat Millwall compared to what Millwall did at Burnley, again, that gets expectations higher, doesn't it? And listen, we know expectations are already through the roof. So imagine what it'll be like if we win another 3 on the bounce. And if we're going to go for the title, let's be realistic. They should probably be getting at least 6 points from Millwall, QPR, and Swansea. They've got to win the title.
I've seen some Millwall fans, to be fair, across social media that off the back of that win against Burnley, they're fairly confident that they can make it a very uncomfortable night on Wednesday. It's a weird one because obviously they tried to go down the route of was it Joe Edwards, who was the former England under-20s manager, and they were trying to go down a completely un-Millwall-like style of possession-based football and all that, and it didn't work and didn't last. And then, lo and behold, bring back former Millwall legend Neil Harris.
Neil
Harris,
Neil Harris.
And suddenly, it's like the bats are doing the old style Neil Harris play, but it's working for them.
It is.
No, go on, mate. You're right.
Go, mate.
I was just going to say it's different things for different clubs. Different things work for different clubs, and you'll find things that like certain styles of play suit certain clubs. The fans are more receptive to it. Certain managers work at certain clubs. Certain players work at certain clubs. That you might look at somebody who's been awful somewhere but goes somewhere else and just rips it up. Do you know what I mean? These are just facts of football. It's why football's a strange game. It's why we love it. And obviously Neil Harris, that style of play, it's what the Millwall fans buy into, and it's really working for him again at the moment.
Yeah, you know what, guys, you took out what I was going to say. You pretty much said exactly what I was going to say. And I think this is one thing that we'll see in all the leagues now, where the tables are starting to shape up, but the squads are going to become ever so important. You know, you're going to get into that. We're getting into that period in territory where some players are going to get suspended because they've accumulated the yellow cards. You're going to get the odd injuries now because they're playing quite a lot of games in a short amount of time. So that squad is going to come into play. And let's be honest, we've said it, and I know it's Chris, you're going to have a wry smile, but Leeds' squad is arguably one of the best in that division. So if it is going to be the best in the division, they've got to prove it, haven't they? But they've got to prove it now because they've got that number of players and the depth in the squad that they've got. Whereas you look at other teams, with respect at the moment, you know, Burnley losing to Millwall, Sheffield United having a half decent, probably 13. And when you look at that and you kind of maybe looking for less experience, Sunderland are flying really well, but have they got the squad to maintain that form for the rest of the season? If you are a Leeds fan and outside looking in, Leeds have that stronger kind of core squad to get them through these tough moments, and they've got to do it now. Because if they don't, they are going to find themselves in the playoffs. And you know what, Leeds and playoffs equal.
I think you're spot on, Lou, with what you were saying at the start. The league tables are starting to take shape now. This next couple of months, November, December, you get into the new year. You look, once you get there, it tends to be set for how the season's going to. Obviously, you'll get the odd surprise. There's normally a team who'll come from nowhere to make the playoffs. But roughly, once you get into January, you're there or thereabouts. This is when teams sort of find out who they are and what they're going to be for the season. And hopefully, for our clubs, we all get what we want.
Yeah, still plenty of time for Leeds to finish sixth. I'm just doing that to wind up Brownie and Joe. I think January is going to be interesting. I know it's a couple of months away yet, actually, but I think for sides like Sunderland, in particular Watford as well, who are, I'll be honest, really surprising me. I did not expect them to be anywhere near where they are now. I think the January window is going to be very, very interesting for them because they'll be the ones that, if they are around those playoffs or within 6 or 8 points of the top 2, might actually invest and spend a bit to try and have that push for the top 2 and make it not quite as easy for Leeds as Leeds fans think it's going to be, it seems. Right. We've done it. We've got through another hour and 3/4 show. But, gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Big thank you to our guest tonight as well, Scott Kerr, who joined us at the start of the show, and to the Liversedge manager and former Guiseley Avenue and Halifax right back, Ryan Toulson, as well, who joined us a little bit earlier on this evening. Lewis, Gaz, a pleasure as always. We'll be back next week here on the West Yorkshire Football Show with our usual Monday roundup. Do check on social media, on X and on Facebook, for any club dedicated shows. I'm sure that Steve will have something Huddersfield Town based, and Brownie and Jay will have something looking ahead to the weekend's Leeds games for sure. But from myself and from the lads, enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll be back with you next Monday here on the West Yorkshire Football Show.